many people have gathered in this southern city. I wanted to turn now to Reverend Jesse Jackson. We saw him last night, just as he had come out of the church, paying last respects to Reverend Pinckney.
I think that the emotions are high. People seem to be rallying to each other in unusual ways. The question is this embarrassment or is it transformational? If this had happened in the next state over, would that be the same amount of fervor? Black men unarmed are being shot down. We see in this state, for example, Brother Pinckney was fighting to deal with too much easy access to guns. In this state, 350,000 people have no health insurance. And 1/4 of the state is in poverty, and yet they reject $10 billion Medicaid bill, won again in the Supreme Court just today. 25% of the population is African American, 75% of the prison population is African American, and 20% of those do prison labor for 30 to 80 cents an hour. South Carolina State is on the verge of closing because of lack of state investment. So it seems to me if we're going to deal with the issue of poverty and issues that matter, it must be a transformation moment, not just a kind of embarrassment so we can keep false face on good news and tourism.
And your thoughts on the Confederate flag?
The Confederate flag must come down. Trade must go down. It must be a substantial boycott, and it just can't apply to South Carolina. You know, the flag represents secession from the United States of America. It represents sedition, an attempt to violently overthrow the government. Slavery as a form of economic development, states' rights over federal rights, and suppression of rights of women. It's racist to the extent it's white supremacy, male supremacy, anti-black, anti-gender equality, anti-Semitic because of religious supremacy. So this thing's a little deeper than just racism. It is and the Confederates won some significant concessions when the war was over. First concession they won was the right to maintain their dignity. None of them were indicted. All were pardoned, though they tried to overthrow the government. Second concession they won was the right to control, the right to get paid for the slaves they had to give up. The third concession was they got the right to control the votes. We got the vote in 1870, they didn't get it back to 1965. The right to control the rights of women. They got the right to control health care, education, and labor, and voting. So that the concessions that the Confederates won were substantial. And to this day, there's not this city is 45% African American, not one block of business in downtown Charleston. So I'm not impressed with the Kumbaya moment unless there's some plan for financial investment and a budget alteration. If the flag comes down, but you still have less access to voting, it's not a good deal. If the flag comes down and you still have high race profiling and blacks go to jail at a rate 3 times that of whites, not a good deal. The question is, are the bankers out here, with increased bank lending and a more effective use of pension funds, what would be the concreteness beyond this moment of passion?
Now, but as people came to Columbia, to the State House, to see Reverend Pinckney, the state senator, laying in state, first African-American since Reconstruction to lay in state in the Capitol Rotunda, they had to pass the Confederate flag. Do you think Nikki Haley, the governor, could have just taken it down like the governor of Alabama did? I'm
not sure she could do that technically. I think she's taken a very public position, which I think is a very decent position that Nikki Haley has taken. It's the right position. Now Senator Graham has taken that position, and Senator Scott has taken that position. Romney has taken that position. But we must only change the Confederate flag, we must change the Confederate agenda. The agenda is anti-black with white male supremacy. The agenda is anti-Semitic with religious supremacy. The agenda is anti-female, will not pass an Equal Rights Amendment for women. We must have an agenda. The Confederates need to rejoin America. They need to rejoin the Union. They must make a bigger decision than taking this. Like, they must rejoin the Union of States. 350,000 people without health insurance in the state. Quarter of the state in poverty, and they reject $10 billion in Medicaid on a 9-to-1 ratio. That's a low investment for high returns. But there's so much mean that this boy. This is the same state where Congressman Wilson called the president a liar, and the Congress went home and raised $2 million that weekend. Where Susan Smith killed the 2 babies in the water in Union, South Carolina.
Where were you born?
At Greenville, South Carolina. She killed those 2 babies and said that a black man who didn't even exist. So that we cannot settle for cheap grace on a matter so serious.
You're standing on Calhoun Street, right in front of Mother Emanuel.
Slaveholder, and it runs right into Meeting Street where they sold our people. This place is dripping with a kind of indecency, a kind of barbarism. I mean, slavery 246 years was real. And the extension of slavery was even worse in many ways, because at least slave masters tried to protect the health of their slaves enough for them to work and reproduce. But after slavery, when slaveocracy lost to democracy and kept the political and military power, 4,000 blacks were lynched. 163 lynched in this state without one indictment, often carried out by judges and police. And so the depth of resentment and meanness and toxicity here must not be played down.
Your thoughts on Dylan Roof being in the Charleston jail, as is Officer Michael Slager, who gunned down Walter Scott, the African-American man who was running away from him, and he shot him in the back in North Charleston.
One man shot in the back running, another 9 more shot in the church across the street. So 10 blacks are dead, 2 white men in jail. And we do not know what the outcome will be in a judicial sense. We know the result is in that these men are dead, and we know who killed them. But the question of what will be done concretely beyond using these 2 guys as posters to represent the culture. The culture is much deeper and much wider than 2 men. Much deeper and much wider than 2 men.
The Reverend Jesse Jackson, standing in front of Mother Emanuel Church, as thousands paid their last respects to South Carolina State Senator and the Reverend Clementa Pinckney. Today, the funeral for Reverend Pinckney. Thousands are lining up to attend. That does it for our broadcast. Special thanks to the Sustainability Institute here in Charleston, and to our local crew, Robbie Bischoff, Nick Townsend, Rafael Rivera, Doug Kelly, and Garland Irvin. And to our crew here who came down to Charleston with me, to Amy Littlefield and Dennis Moynihan, to John Hamilton. Thank you so much to Julie Crosby and Sam Alcoff and Aaron Mate. We have 2 job openings at Democracy Now! Check our website. Thank you to Renee Feltz and to Elizabeth Press. And to all the folks at Democracy Now!, Nermeen Sheikh and Dina Guzder, who made this broadcast possible. Our website's democracynow.org. We're broadcasting from Charleston, South Carolina.